Hello students, welcome to today's lecture on Buddhist education. Today we would like to discuss the basic principles of Buddhist education, curriculum, methods of teaching, methods of evaluation and the aims of education. First, the basic principles. Buddhism emerged as a reaction to Vedic ritualism, which had increased to the extent that the people were profoundly troubled. Brahmins deprived the common people of their right to education, while Buddhism granted the people freedom to obtain education and practice their religion freely. Lord Buddha imparted a practicable form to life, which resulted in the emergence of a practicable religion and a practical educational system. Buddhist education came into existence in the 6th century BC, it said, as a reaction against Brahmanic reservational system of education. Buddhists began to establish educational monasteries in competition to the Vedic system of education. Initially, these Buddhist monasteries provided education only to Buddhists, but gradually they came to impart education to all classes. Buddhists imparted education in sanghas, that is, in collective groups. These were known as sanghas. Dr. Mukherjee opines that the Buddhist educational system is the method of Buddhist congregations called sanghas. In the Buddhist system, there was no opportunity for the individual to obtain education independently away from the sangha or the congregation. The basic truths or principles of Buddhism and their relevance that we are now going to discuss. In order to make the people realize the concept of soul, sorrow, rebirth and salvation, Buddha made efforts to apprise them of the cause of sorrow in human life and gave them tangible ways of riddance from suffering in the form of some basic truths known as principles of Buddhism. Now these principles are: 1. Suffering. He said life is full of sorrow, sufferings and mental anguish. Now the cause of suffering, avarice and worldly attachment are the causes of suffering. Third one, elimination of suffering. It's possible to end the sufferings we have. The fourth principle is ways of elimination of suffering. Suffering can be got rid of by acquiring knowledge, wisdom, mental peace and tranquility. Regarding ignorance as the root cause of all this, Lord Buddha suggested some ways and means of getting rid of these and said, I quote, "Due to lack of real knowledge, man remains subjected to the tendency of birth and he does not get redemption from the wheel of birth and rebirth." Unquote. Now, he further said, nirvana is attainable after the purgation of sorrows. Nirvana, however, does not imply the ending of life as I myself could achieve it in my lifetime. Buddha has shown us a way of purging sorrow and it was called the way of nirvana. This way of nirvana has been popularized as the eightfold path of Buddhism. This is the path that leads to good, pure, pious and noble life. Now following are the 8 ways. These are known as steps of Ashtanga that make the path of redemption easy and feasible for all humans. The first one is right view or right knowledge. The first and foremost aim of education is to provide man with the right knowledge. Due to the ignorance of self, we develop a false perception or knowledge of the material world. Having obtained the true knowledge, an educated man perceives the world in its real form. It is this right perception which enables a man to recognize the real nature of the world and is called sammaditthi. The second path, he says, is right intentions or right will. Mere getting of right knowledge does not end the suffering unless there is a will to lead the life in accordance with this knowledge. For this to happen, man should determine to give up hatred, indulgence in sensuous objects, and to stop involving any kind of violence. This is called the Sama Sankalp. Now, the third path, he says, is right speech. A person should have control over his speech, which should be balanced and appropriate to the occasion. He should not speak ill of others. He should not use unpleasant and false language and should not lie. This is called samavacha. Fourth path is right conduct. The actions of a person should be well controlled. Right actions or right conduct comprises non-violence, non-stealing, truth, and control over senses. This is called samakamant. The fifth path is right living or right vocation. The life of a person should be such that he feeds himself and his family only by adopting right and good means of livelihood. Whatever he chooses as his vocation, he should never deviate from discharging his duties in the right manner. This he called sammayit. Sixth path is right effort or right exercise. In spite of having attained right knowledge, we are still liable to deviate from our right path of life because of old traditions called sanskars. These sanskars are liable to cause bad thoughts and dispositions. It is therefore expected of a person that he preaches right knowledge and right will. This is called samavayam. Seventh path is right mindedness or right memory. Even the right knowledge can fade away if not remembered or recalled from time to time. The educated person keeps recalling what he has learned with a view that he might not relapse into ignorance again. This is called samasati. The eighth path is right meditation or right concentration. After developing the above mentioned 7 traits of personality, the person qualifies himself to enter into the state of right meditation, the first prerequisite to attain nirvana and the ultimate goal of human life. This is called sama samadhi. In this manner, Lord Buddha evolved a path which was not difficult to traverse and through which anyone could attain nirvana. Lord Buddha regarded the established practices of Hindu religion such as Vedic mantras, worship of gods and goddesses, sacrifices, rigorous penances, etc., as useless for the purpose of nirvana or salvation. This is a great gift from Lord Buddha to the woe-begone humanity. Lord Buddha's eightfold path is believed to have relevance even today. Its importance is being felt with increased and everlasting utility, even when science and technology is progressing day by day and is affecting every aspect of our human life. The path that has been shown to us by Lord Buddha ensures complete human welfare and progress, provided we adopt it sincerely and with utter devotion. Out of these 8 paths, Lord Buddha has laid ample stress on the middle path called Madhya Marga, which entails that man should avoid both extremes, that is, a life of comforts and luxuries and a life of severe asceticism. Such an approach is sure to show the humanity the real path to progress and ensure welfare to humanity. Let's now study some important aims of Buddhist education. Buddhist educational system prepared the pupils to face different life situations successfully. It said that this educational system embarked upon all aspects of their life. Its aims were therefore very comprehensive. Now, following were the main aims of Buddhist education. 1. Development of knowledge. Lord Buddha, the promoter of Buddhism, believed that this world is the house of pain and grief, and the main cause of all this is ignorance. Therefore, he stressed on the objective of nirvana or salvation, which could be achieved if one could overcome this grief and pain. This was possible only through the knowledge and understanding of the real truth. Second aim of education is moral development. Buddhist education aims at moral and spiritual development of an individual. This was made possible in a conducive environment of monasteries. Third is character development. This character development was the main responsibility of a teacher. For this, essential rules and regulations were set. Peoples were taught to lead a life according to the eightfold code of conduct. Self-control, discipline, piety and sympathy were stressed by Buddhism. These qualities used to build character in monasteries and vihars. These were the education institutions of that time. The fourth aim is development of culture. Preservation, refinement and transmission of essentials of Buddhist philosophy and other aspects of Indian cultural heritage was another important aim of Buddhist education. The bhikshus studied Buddhist philosophy and practiced the same in their lives. They taught the same to others who came in their contact. Essential amendments were made in the culture to suit to the changing conditions. The culture thus developed and got transmitted to the coming generations. The fifth aim is education for good social conduct. Buddha's philosophy believed in the welfare of human beings in general. Stress was therefore given on sympathy and piety. Too much of stress was given on the training of conduct of the disciples. According to Buddha, virtue and wisdom purify each other, and the two are inescapable. An important virtue, according to him, is welfare of the society, and societal development is as essential as the development of an individual's personality. Sixth aim is education for vocational development. Buddhist education stressed on right living, that is, a right vocation called samāyit. The life of a person should be such that he feeds himself and his family by adopting right means of livelihood. The choice of the vocation would definitely depend on his interest, disposition and skill. The syllabus of education was therefore very comprehensive and included many practical and vocational subjects. The seventh aim is religious education. Though worldly education was given ample stress, religious education was not ignored. For it, 4 truths and 8 paths that have been discussed earlier were practiced by the learners. After Upasampada ceremony, that is a ceremony marking the end of education and declaring a person as a bhikshu, the disciples were declared monks and they got the right to teach and propagate Buddhism. The 8th aim is development of all-round personality. In Buddhist philosophy of education, the real education implies development of total personality, that is, development of personality in all its aspects, such as physical, intellectual, social, moral, spiritual, and material aspects. It was all-round harmonious and well-balanced development of personality for which attention was paid by Buddhists. Let us now discuss curriculum of Buddhist education. Buddhist curriculum was chiefly spiritual in nature. It was so because the chief aim of education was to attain salvation or nirvana. So, the study of religious philosophy of Lord Buddha was most important and thus compulsory. So, Tanta, Vinaya and Dhamma were the main subjects prescribed for such a study. This type of curriculum was meant only for monks. It said that education during this period could be classified into two parts. First, primary, and second, higher. In primary education, emphasis was laid on the teaching of reading, writing and arithmetic, while in higher education, religion, philosophy, military science, medicine, art, handicrafts, archery, geology, the science of taming and training animals, etc. were taught. According to Professor Bhatnagar, I quote him, educational syllabus in Buddhist period was of two kinds. The one, he says, is a religious syllabus, and the second, the material syllabus. The former comprehended the teaching of Vedas and Buddhist literature, while the latter paid attention to the material and physical needs of the society. It included training in such subjects as writing, arithmetic, spinning and weaving, printing and dyeing, stitching or tailoring, sculpture, art which included drawing and painting, music, agriculture, etc. Besides these, comparative study of Vedic and Jain religions was also in practice. Regarding religious syllabus, Professor Bhatnagar says subjects like philosophy, logic, metaphysics, astrology, astronomy, axiology, administration, law and justice, polity were taught. Besides these subjects, Sanskrit and Pali languages were also taught to the students. Professor Mehta quotes Hemant Sang as having said, higher education of the monasteries may be best considered under two aspects. One, theoretical, concerning curricula and studies, and second, practical, concerning conduct and discipline. While primary education took the form of worldly materialistic education, the curriculum of higher education included a religious syllabus as well as worldly syllabus. He, that is Professor Mehta, is of the opinion that curriculum was expanded by the later followers of Buddhism and many practical subjects were included in it. So, in Buddhist monasteries, teaching and learning of the following types of knowledge can be found. First, word knowledge. It includes an integration of word formation, etymology and knowledge of grammar. Second, knowledge of different crafts like spinning and weaving, painting, printing, dyeing, knitting, stitching, sculpture, agriculture and animal husbandry, etc. The third type is medical education, which includes knowledge of medicine, surgery and physiology. The fourth category is logic, which involves thinking and reasoning. Fifth is spiritual education. It includes the study of Buddhism, Vedic literature, and a comparison of different philosophies with Buddhism. Sixth category was that of games and sports. In monasteries, there was a provision for games and sports and other physical exercises because, according to Buddhism, a healthy body and a healthy mind are considered essential for healthy ideas. The seventh category is the other subjects like commerce, elephant lore, archery, magic, knowledge of reviving the dead, knowledge of animal cries and sounds, prophecy, bodily gestures, military science, geology, arithmetic, religious discussions, and science of taming and training animals were included in the curriculum. In early stages, the medium of instruction was Sanskrit. Later, Pali, that was the original folk language, was also adopted to impart education. Lord Buddha, it is said, stressed on adoption of Pali as the medium of instruction to develop a link with the masses. Buddhism gave an impetus to the study of the vernacular dialects in place of classical Sanskrit, though the study of Buddhist scriptures like Dhammapada and sutras was compulsory for all learners who studied in monasteries and vihars. It said that Buddhist institutions were not sectarian nor purely theological in their courses. Instead, other religions and philosophies were also studied. Let's now study methods of teaching. Buddhist education was universal and at the same time institutionalized. The art of writing had become common by the time of Lord Buddha, but the method of oral instruction still continued in the field of education as a legacy of Vedic and Brahmanic education. This might have been true due to the paucity or non-availability of writing materials. But still, the learning of art of writing was stressed to make it a means of earning a livelihood. This was, in a way, a vocational subject. Now, following is the brief description of some cheap methods of teaching which were in vogue during the Buddhist period. The first is oral method. This was the most popular method. Students were required to memorize the text, learn it by heart, and meditate on it. I.T. Sang says, I quote him, "The pupil read a portion of the scripture and reflected on what he has learned. He acquired new knowledge day by day and searched into old subjects month after month without losing even a minute." These were the three steps in the practice of wisdom. They are study, thought, and meditation. This is what was said by Mr. Sang. Thus, this method would comprise listening, comprehension, contemplation, recall, and recollection. Second important method is question-answer method. Since Buddhism was a new religion, it was necessary to propagate it. Its successful propagation depended on the propagator's knowledge and his skill to answer the questions asked by a person. It's said that question-answer method was very dominant, even when other methods and techniques had come into existence. Pupils were trained in asking questions which would be brief and quite pointing, and the teacher was expected to give a pointing and satisfactory answer to these questions. The success of this method would depend on the quality of the question and the way it would be answered. Now, the third very important method in Buddhist education was debates and discussions. Along with the question answer method, stress was laid on debates and discussions, reasoning, analysis, explanation, and exposition. During Buddhist age, students were trained in the art of asking questions and debating from the very beginning of the academic career. In this way, they developed clarity of vision through discussion on different problems of life. They had to be proficient in the art of discussing things in order to convince and satisfy those followers of Buddhism who had any doubts. However, in Buddhist literature, rules were laid for such discussions, in that discussions would be done on some useful topic at a proper place, like an assembly of learned people, a royal palace, or a parishad. The debater was expected to have a thorough knowledge of the topic, as also the skill to answer the questions to the best satisfaction of the person who asked. The fourth method is direct method. In Buddhist system of education, direct method of teaching was adopted because the teacher and the students dwelt in the monasteries together, that is, they lived there together. The teacher would suggest a lesson to them and the students would learn it by heart. The teacher would proceed further only after having ascertained thorough memorization and comprehension of the lesson by the pupils. The pupils could directly also come in contact with a new and exploratory topic and would dwell on it, of course, seeking help from the teacher. The fifth method is interpretation method. Here, learning material was presented in the form of sutras or formula, which were interpreted by the teacher. The students would raise their doubts in between and the teacher would remove them. Any new item of knowledge would be analyzed and interpreted quite intelligently, jointly by the teacher and the pupils. In this way, their knowledge and comprehension could be confirmed. The sixth method is meditation method. This method was adopted by certain Buddhist monks who dwelt in the solitude of forests and realized supreme knowledge, as they called it, through meditation. It is said that this method was not suitable for ordinary students. Instead, very courageous, brave, talented, and utterly dedicated students would attempt such endeavors. A child would get admitted to the monastery only when he was 8+. At the time of admission, a simple ceremony was performed which was called pabaja ceremony. The word pabaja implies going out or renouncing all the worldly and family connections. An individual belonging to any caste could be admitted to a monastery, and after joining the Sangha, he did not belong to any caste. For pabaja, the individual had to get his head fully shaved and put on yellow clothes. On doing so, he was presented before the presiding bhikshu, who would accept his request, admit him, and administer some basic advices to him. The child would study in the Sangha for 12 years and then, after going through the Upasampada ceremony, would become a full-fledged member of the Sangha and would be called the Samner or the Sarman, that is, monk. Teacher and students together had to observe the same code of conduct. If a student disobeyed or violated this code of conduct, he was expelled from the institution, and this was called niskasan. The preceptor, that is the teacher, had the power to expel a student when he realized that the student did not have right regard and devotion for him. After having studied for 12 years, the student had to undergo upasampada ceremony, wherein the student had to present himself in front of all monks. One could be admitted for this ceremony only when majority of the monks voted in favor of him. After this ceremony, the Shraman became a full-fledged member or monk of the monastery. On becoming a monk, he had to sever all his worldly as well as family relationships. Now, something about the teacher. The Buddhist teacher was a man of qualities. He was pious, religious, and spiritual. His preeminence was primarily accepted in the spiritual realm. The teachers were not only ideal men of character, but also men of great learning. They lived a simple and clean life. The teachers were of two types, one acharyas and the second upadhyayas. Acharyas were those who were profound scholars and original thinkers. Upadhyayas had a higher authority than acharyas. They were the custodians of main teaching and learning process. Both the teacher and the students were answerable to the Buddhist order. But regarding education, food, clothing, and residence of the student, the teacher was wholly responsible. He was also responsible for any treatment of the student whenever he fell ill. He bestowed all his affection and love to his students and took care of him in all respects. Now, a few words about the examinations and accreditation. There was no formal examination and certification system in Buddhist education. Success in real life situations was the test of one's efficiency and effectiveness of education. After receiving education for 12 years in the monastery or the vihar, the teacher used to give some pieces of advice to the students for their happy future life and for the welfare of the society. Now, something about organization and management of Buddhist education. There was no formal administration and supervisory system in Buddhist education. But at the same time, the system of education was well organized by the Buddhist order. Self-imposed restrictions on the part of all concerned made the system most disciplined and thus effective. Major role in managing the system was played by the teacher. The life and education of children was quite economical. Living and dietary habits were simple and non-luxurious. Begging of alms and receipt of dakshina from the community were the main sources of income. The system was therefore devoid of any kind of budgeting and allocation of funds from any government of the type of present times or any other organization. Well, students, with this we conclude today's topic. Thank you very much for listening.